In the 6th century, Turkic tribes, later known as Orkhon Turkish, the Gokturks, Old Turks, were a Turkic people who emerged and established an empire in Central Asia in the 6th century AD, predating the Mongols. They are known as the founders of the First Turkic Empire and had a significant influence on the history of the region. The Gokturk Empire became the dominant power in Central Asia, stretching from Manchuria to the Black Sea and involved in the Silk Road trade. The territory of present-day Mongolia and ruled the area until the middle of the 7th century. The Orkhon inscriptions are a key historical source for the Gokturk, Old Turkic Empire, founded in the 730s. These inscriptions name figures such as Kultejan, Tanyukuk, and Bilge Khan. Recently, a monument believed to belong to Ilturish, the father of Bilge and Kultejan, was discovered by a research team from the International Turkic Academy and the Mongolian Archaeological Institute. The Orkhon inscription itself is important historical evidence regarding the ancient Turkish empire and culture. These inscriptions are written in Orkhon script and contain records of important events, history, and also the cultural values of the Turkish people at that time. When they were replaced by the Uyghurs, who stayed until the 8th and 9th centuries. By the 10th century, the Liao dynasty, also known as Khitan, was established in the eastern part of the region, present-day Manchuria. The Khitan were in power from 916 to 1119, when they, in turn, were replaced by another nomadic people, the Jin dynasty, also known as Altan Ulus 1115 to 1234. Before Genghis Khan, the steppe was populated by Orkhon Turkish, Ongguds, Merkits, Tatars, Keraites, Naimans, Mongols Turkic-speaking tribes. These groups intermarried, fought, and traded constantly. There was no singular Mongol identity. Mongol was one of many tribal identities. Benefiting from the legacy of the Gokturk and Hun, Uyghur states, Genghis Khan also adopted the idea of world domination from these states. The most obvious clues to this are seen in Genghis Khan's descent from Bortikina, the sacred ancestor of the Gokturks, or Bozkurt. Genghis Khan's belief in himself as ruler of the universe and the legitimacy of this rule from divine sources is a fundamental principle inherent in the Gokturk and Hun states. The idea that the understanding and belief in God is represented in the Khagan, and that this belief is reinforced by cosmic elements, also has Turkic origins. According to the Turkic perspective, the Turkic Khagan, appointed by God, is God's representative and shadow on earth. Just as there is a God in the heavens, there will be a Khagan on earth. It is a widely accepted theory in the scientific community that the Mongolian concept of Tigri derives from the Turkish word Tungri. Mongols attribute Genghis Khan's arrival to the fulfillment of divine purposes. Just as Oga's Khagan walked and spoke of hunting 40 days after his birth, Genghis Khan was born with a blood clot in his hand. The Mongols adopted many elements of state administration and organization from Turkic culture. The Tor tradition, known as Genghis Khan's laws, also has Turkic roots. Similarly, scholars argue that concepts related to state administration, such as law, custom, nation, flag, and law, were adopted from Turkic into Mongolian. It is no coincidence that Genghis Khan chose Otukhin, the capital of the Gokturks, Huns, and Uyghurs, the sacred homeland of the Turks, as his capital. Genghis Khan heeded Bilge Khagan's advice to the Turkic people in the Orkhon inscriptions. The Otukhin forest is a place to cherish as a homeland. In addition to political and geopolitical reasons, he also wanted to benefit from the protective and monitoring power of Otukon. Genghis Khan was not a descendant of the Mongol people in the sense of a unified, pure Mongol ethnicity as defined by later conceptions or dynasties like the Yuan, or even outside interpretations. The Yuan dynasty, established by his grandson Kublai Khan, inherited this multi-ethnic foundation, ruling over China with Mongol leadership, but with heavy incorporation of Turkic Persian elites. In fact, before Genghis Khan, born as Temujin, there was no singular Mongol people in the modern or even later medieval sense. Genghis Khan, Temujin, was born into the Borjigin clan, a noble lineage among the steppe tribes. His father, Yasuji, was a chief of the Kamag Mongol Confederation and a descendant of Bodankar Munkhak, a semi-legendary figure considered one of the founders of the Mongol people. However, even among the Borjigin, there was intermarriage with other tribes, including the Tatars and others. His mother, Polan, was originally from the Orkhon tribe, affiliated with the Merkits, meaning Temujin was, not ethnically pure by any modern standard. The truth is layered. Genghis Khan came from a multi-tribal, fluid society on the steppe. His identity can't be easily boxed into modern ethnic categories like pure Mongol. Many modern retellings reflect racial, political, or cultural motivations, not just historical fact. The several studies have looked at blood samples collected over a period of 10 years from more than 40 populations living in and around the former Mongol Empire. Geneticists use the Y chromosome in population studies such as this because it doesn't recombine as other parts of the genome do. When it comes to eye color or height or resistance or susceptibility to particular diseases, each parent contributes half of a child's DNA, which join together to form a new genetic combination. The Y chromosome is passed on as a chunk of DNA from father to son, basically unchanged through generations except for random mutations. These random mutations, which happen naturally and are usually harmless, are called markers. Once the markers have been identified, geneticists can go back in time and trace them to the point at which they first occurred, defining a unique lineage of descent that in this particular instance, the lineage originated 1,000 years ago. The authors aren't saying that the genetic mutations defining the lineage originated with Khan, who was born around 1162. They're more likely to have been passed on to him by a great-great-grandfather. The lineage was found in only one population outside of the former Mongolian Empire in Pakistan. The Hazaras of Pakistan gave us our first clue to the connection with Genghis Khan, said Wells. They have a long oral tradition that says they're his direct descendants. Of course, the connection to Genghis Khan will never be a certainty unless his grave is found and his DNA could be extracted. Until then, geneticists will continue to seek out isolated populations in the hope of unraveling the mysteries of geographic origin and relatedness told by our genes. Did you know? According to Chinese literature, the Mongol leader Genghis Khan never allowed anyone to paint his portrait, sculpt his image, or engrave his likeness on a coin. The first images of him appeared after his death. Genghis Khan passed away in 1227 while still engaged in campaigns against the Western Xia dynasty in China. However, after his death in 1227, his descendants, while initially following his vision, did indeed sometimes act beyond his original goals or intentions. Genghis Khan had structured his empire to allow for a degree of autonomy for his sons and generals, particularly in regions that they conquered. His sons continued to expand the empire, but often in ways that diverged from the unified and centralized control that Genghis had envisioned. While Genghis Khan wanted his empire to remain unified, his death led to a decentralization of power. The empire was divided into 4 main khanates, each ruled by a different branch of his family. His descendants fought for supremacy, sometimes using his name and authority to justify their own rule and expand their territories. While Ongguds Khan was the designated successor, there were others, such as Makali, Jebe, and Chagatai, who were influential and had their own ambitions. Another son of Genghis was also a key figure in the succession dispute, though he was not yet in a strong enough position to claim leadership at the time of Genghis's death. Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, did not immediately represent the empire after Genghis's death. He became a prominent figure only later, after the death of Ongguds Khan. While they continued to be loyal to the overall Mongol identity, each khanate often pursued its own interests, which led to differing policies and sometimes rivalries. For example, the Yuan dynasty, founded by Kublai Khan in China, eventually became quite distinct from the Golden Horde in the West. At other times, the Chinese would have to play off one set against another, transferring their support and juggling their alliances so as to prevent any one tribe from becoming too strong. Another factor contributing to the overwhelming success of their expeditions was the skillful use of spies and propaganda. Ongguds Khan, Genghis Khan's third son, was chosen as the Great Khan by the Mongol generals and elders after Genghis's death. He inherited the title of Great Khan, which was supposed to maintain the unity of the Mongol Empire. Ongguds was a relatively moderate and capable ruler, but his reign also marked the beginning of certain deviations from Genghis's vision. Ongguds was seen as Genghis's legitimate successor, so he used his father's name and reputation to reinforce his authority. Genghis Khan died in 1227. His third son, Ongguds Khan, was born in 1186. So, Ongguds Khan was 41 years old when Genghis Khan died. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. Founding the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan's actions marked one of the most significant departures from Genghis Khan's vision. After establishing himself as the ruler of China, Kublai founded the Yuan dynasty, 1271 to 1368, positioning himself as the emperor of China. Genghis Khan, although he had invaded and conquered parts of China, had not fully integrated China into the Mongol Empire, Kublai Khan's role. After the death of Ongguds Khan in 1241, there was a period of disorder as multiple claimants vied for the throne. It wasn't until 1260, after a civil war among the Mongol princes, that Kublai emerged victorious, claiming the title of Great Khan and founding the Yuan dynasty in China. He had moved away from the Mongol traditions of his grandfather, embracing many Chinese customs. Kublai's ambition. Kublai Khan used the legacy of Genghis Khan to bolster his own claim, often invoking his grandfather's name to justify his rule. However, he did so with a more Sinicized approach, particularly after establishing his control over China. The time between Genghis Khan's death in 1227 and his grandson Kublai Khan's death in 1294 was 67 years, which equates to 6.7 decades. Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, conquest of the Middle East. Kublai Khan, one of Genghis Khan's grandsons, led the Mongol invasion of the Ilkhanate and conquered vast parts of the Middle East. His campaigns culminated in the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate and the destruction of Baghdad in 1258, which marked a major turning point in Islamic history. Kublai used the name of Genghis Khan to justify his military campaigns and his position as a ruler of the Middle East. He claimed Genghis Khan's legacy, particularly the idea of Mongol supremacy, to solidify his control in the region. Like other descendants, he leveraged Genghis's authority to command loyalty from his troops and the local populations. But his brutal tactics often caused him to be seen as a more autonomous and less centralized leader compared to his grandfather. Genghis Khan did not live to see the full Mongol conquest of the Middle East. He was involved in earlier campaigns against the Khwarezmian Empire and the Western Xia, but the sacking of Baghdad and the expansion into Persia came after his death, under the leadership of his grandsons, particularly Kublai Khan. The campaign also demonstrated Genghis Khan's ability to adapt his strategies based on the situation. He initially sought to avoid conflict with the Khwarezmian Shah, but when provoked, he responded with a full-scale invasion. Many other civilizations contributed to the development of human knowledge long before Chinese civilization reached its peak. The Golden Horde, Bata Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. Conquest of Russia and Eastern Europe. Bata Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, led the Mongol invasion of Kievan Rus and eventually established the Golden Horde. This Khanate became one of the most powerful Mongol successor states. Batu Khan continued the Mongol tradition of conquest, but operated in a way that was often more independent from the central authority of the Great Khan, especially as his rule expanded westward into Eastern Europe. Batu Khan used the name and authority of Genghis Khan as a sacred mantle for his conquest and rule, justifying his actions and demands for tribute from the Russian principalities. However, as the Golden Horde grew more independent, Batu and his successors increasingly used the Mongol identity in a way that emphasized regional dominance over the larger, unified Mongol vision Genghis had once laid out. Historical narratives are often shaped by those who record or interpret them, which can lead to biased or incomplete versions of events. The story of the Mongols and Genghis Khan is no exception. The truth about the Mongols is complex, multifaceted, and often lost between the lines of opposing narratives. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I've got more coming your way. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.